Welcome to Swartz Talkin Sports. I'm your host, Les Swartz. Another fantastic show tonight. We're rolling 4 in a row. We've got a Hall of Fame guest coming on. But before we bring on tonight's guest, let me introduce my co-host for this evening and all the time, former Florida A&M Rattler National Championship quarterback and current analyst on Rattler broadcast basketball and football, Al Chester.
Happy Hump Day, my man. What's going on, Chief? Greetings from muggy, overcast Jacksonville.
I was going to say,
I tell you what, we got a great show tonight, man. We got the legend. I'm excited.
Well, let's just hope that your internet stays the way it is right now. We had a little issue pre-show, so let's just pray we got this thing going. But yeah, we do. We've got a great guest on tonight. So before we bring on tonight's guest, I'm going to have our producer, Tony, run tonight's opening reel.
Hello, everyone. Charlie Neal here as BET celebrates 40 years in existence. I was with BET from the very beginning as we broadcast our first sports event. It was September 1980, and it was a football game with South Carolina State taking on Delaware State up in Dover, Delaware. That was the start of historically black colleges and universities getting much needed exposure that they were not getting from the other networks. We also gave viewers a look at future NFL stars like Jerry Rice and future NBA stars like Charles Oakley. I also had a chance to work with some great partners like Jackson State and Pro Football Hall of Famer Lem Barney, and North Carolina Central University and Boston Celtic and NBA great Sam Jones, just to name a few.
Swartz Talkin Sports is proud to introduce Hall of Fame legendary sports broadcaster Charlie Neal.
Well, good evening. How was everybody?
What's up, Charlie? How you doing, Charlie? Good to see you.
It's a long time since I called your games, Al, right?
I'm telling you, that's right. Hey, man, you've been around a long time. You're dating yourself now.
Well, you know, I was 2 when I started.
Charlie, it might have been a long time that you broadcast his games, but I'll tell you, he's still the only HBCU school to win a national championship in football.
That's true. 1978.
1978.
Rudy Hubbard.
That's right. That's right. Quarterbacked by the legend himself, Al Chester. Well, Al, we have Charlie here for a little bit, a legendary broadcaster. The minute he talks, you know exactly who he is and what he's done. But well, I know you're interested in how Charlie got really started. So why don't you start up the interview here?
Absolutely. I tell you what, Charlie has that voice. He's got that broadcast voice that gets you all excited about a football game, any type of athletic event. He's a broadcaster par excellence, effective, very effective communicator. Charlie, tell us how it all started for you, man. Where you grew up, did you play ball yourself growing up, and what motivated you and to get into broadcasting and just kind of walk us up the timeline, if you will, your illustrious career?
Well, I grew up in Philadelphia, and I had a buddy of mine who actually was a radio disc jockey at a radio station, HAT in Philadelphia. His name was Scott Taylor. And I used to go by the station and watch him do his thing. You know, at back that time, disc jockeys, they played all the hip songs, hit records, and, you know, talk trash on the radio and did a bunch of different things. And I really kind of took a liking to it. And so he kind of encouraged me to try the field, try to get into broadcasting, because I kind of had a dibble, and dabbed in a little bit when I was in high school. I used to make the announcements at my high school for the change of classes or anything that was going on there. And then I grew up went to a Catholic high school. In the parish where I grew up, the Catholic elementary school, we used to have skating parties on the weekend. And I used to play the records and do the announcing for the skating records, but never thought about broadcasting as a career until Scott Taylor kind of encouraged me to try the broadcasting field. And I would sit in for him every now and then. He worked the weekends, and that was, the start of it. And ironically enough, I was visiting some relatives in Durham, North Carolina, how I got into it as a full-time position. I was visiting some relatives in Durham, North Carolina on a weekend, believe it or not. On a Saturday, I'm driving to their house. I come off the interstate, and I pass this radio station in Durham, North Carolina, WSRC in Durham. And nobody's at a radio station on a Saturday, you know. I mean, and it just happened. There was one car in the driveway, and I went up and opened, and the door was open. And I walked in, and the general manager, or the not general manager, the program director, his name is Irvin Hester, he was there, and he was working that particular day. And I said to him, I said, "Are you looking for anybody to do any radio?" And I wasn't looking. I mean, I had a regular job, not in broadcasting, but I just happened to walk in, and he said, "No, we don't have any openings right now." This was like June, late May, early June. And he gave me some copy off the wire and said, "Sit down and read this. And, you know, you never know what'll happen." So I sat down and read some news stories and things of this nature. Like I said, this was in June, and I went visited my relatives, went on back home to Philadelphia. And it was in September, I get a call. Actually, I was out of town, and my mom got the call, and it was Irvin Hester. And he said, "Listen, you're still interested in that job? I got a job for you here in Durham, North Carolina, working at our radio station." This was one of those sun up, sundown things. They came on the air like at 6 o'clock in the morning and went off when the sun went down, you know, back in the old days. And he says, "We don't pay a lot of money." It was like $100 a week. And so I said, "Okay." So, I mean, I had nothing to lose because where I was working, I was actually in transportation. I was working for Greyhound back at the time. And I was doing some things with them. I had started working for them when I was in high school. And even through college, I worked for them, got into driving, got into management and things of this nature. So I went to my district manager and I said to him, I said, "Listen, I got a chance to do this broadcasting thing down in Durham, North Carolina. I'd like to take a leave of absence." And my boss said to me, he says, "Look, I know you're interested in doing it. 6 months, 6 years from now, you always have a job." So I couldn't turn, wow. You know, the opportunity was there. So I packed up a little U-Haul and down to Durham, North Carolina I went. And that's how it all started. I worked at the WSRC. I would sign on in the morning and play music. You know, we played gospel for the first hour. And then I switched hats and went to my rock and roll. But that's how it really all got started for me as far as broadcasting is concerned.
Now, Charlie, what led you?
That's an outstanding story.
Yeah. So what led you to BET? I know that started in 1980. And if you can talk about maybe your first assignment with BET, your first game that you called.
Well, you know, getting to BET, it started actually in Washington, D.C. After about a year down in Durham, North Carolina. I came to Washington, D.C. to work for radio station WOOK. And the program director at WOOK's brother and I were very good friends from Philadelphia. And Ernie Fields was the program director, and he offered me a job at the radio station in Washington, D.C. And about 6 months after I got there, Channel 4, which is the NBC station in Washington, D.C., was specifically looking for an African-American to do weekend sports on their television station there. And I auditioned along with Curt Flood, the former Major League Baseball player, and Ron Pinckney, another broadcaster. We auditioned for that one position, and fortunately, I was able to get the position. And that was in 1971. And that's when I started in television. Of course, BET came along in 1980, and Bob Johnson called me. I had left Washington, D.C., and was working in Detroit at the time at the CBS station in Detroit. And Bob Johnson, the founder of BET, called me back in the summer of 1980. And I didn't know Bob, and he had gotten my name from somewhere. And maybe he remembered me from working in television in D.C. because that's where he lived. And he pitched to me BET. And he said, can we meet? So we met in Chicago. I went up from Detroit to Chicago, and he came in from Washington, D.C., and we met on a Sunday right there at the O'Hare Airport, hotel at O'Hare Airport. And we sat and we talked about what his vision was for Black entertainment television. And one of the things that he wanted to do was showcase historically Black colleges and universities in the sports arena. And he wanted me to be a part of that. And he said, I'm just getting this started. I don't have a lot of money. And He says, but, we can make this work. And I said, look, Bob, it's not about the money right now. I believe in what you're trying to do. I already have a job. I was working at Channel 2 in Detroit. I said, just as long as I don't lose any money, I'm good. So that's how it all started. And the first game we ever did was in September of 1980. It was between South Carolina State and Delaware State in Dover, Delaware. And that's where it all started with BET. A kid named Barney Bussey who went on to play in the NFL. I remember him was playing for South Carolina State at the time. In fact, he was a freshman on that team that year, and he became a hero in that game because he got beaten early for a couple touchdowns by Delaware State, and he came back and knocked down a pass at the end to save the game, and South Carolina State came away victorious. But that's how it all started as far as my broadcasting, as far as historically Black colleges and universities. And of course, that went on from 1980, went on for the 20 plus years at BET.
Charlie, talk to us about some of the other stations that you work for and some of the other games, basketball, football games that you had the opportunity to broadcast, and even some of the impact players during that time. I mean, you could date back some time, so you could talk about some folks that I can really appreciate for sure.
Well, no question about it. One of the things that I was fortunate to have the flexibility to be able to not only do the stuff for CBS and for BET, but also for Turner Sports. I was the halftime host, what Ernie Johnson does now at Turner for a couple of years. We did the first ever Goodwill Games in Russia in 1986. And that's, kind of interesting to look at the Olympic Games are right around the corner in Paris right now. And to look back, I've had a chance to talk to Willie Galt, who was a heck of a football and track star back in the day, and Leroy Walker, Dr. Walker, who was the track coach, Olympic track coach. Him and I, we were broadcast partners on the Goodwill Games with Carl Lewis and Jackie Joyner-Kersee. That was 1986. I did gymnastics. I did track and field. I did a number of different events over the years, between the networks that I was able to work for, between Turner, between BET, between CBS. And I was very fortunate, because I've been able to experience, see, and go places that some people can only dream of. And I was given the opportunity, and I don't take it for granted. I've been blessed. And I feel very, very fortunate that I've been given the talent, and people recognize that and have allowed me to do the things and see the things that a lot of people, just like I said, dream of doing. Some of the players, I saw Jerry Rice in his infancies before he got to the NFL. I got a chance to see Ben Wallace and do games with him. He's a basketball Hall of Famer. I think in the opening you saw me, I worked with Sam Jones, a basketball Hall of Famer. I worked with Bill Russell at Turner, when he was still doing some broadcasting for Turner Broadcasting. We did a playoff game together between the Lakers and the Denver Nuggets. So, I was, like I said, I've been very fortunate to be able to rub some elbows with some great people. Lem Barney was my partner. He's a football Hall of Famer. Unfortunately, his health is not that well at this day and time, in a hospice in Houston, Texas. But we send our prayers out to him. But we were the Summerall and Madden of the Black College for many, many years, 20 plus years. We were together, Lem Barney and I. And to be able to, there was a guy who was the big, tall receiver from Florida A&M. What was his name?
Carmichael.
No, not far. He went to Southern.
Oh, he did.
From Florida A&M.
Come on, Al. Florida A&M.
Big, tall receiver.
Yeah, tall kid. Oh God, it was like he had a name like the Magnificent or something like that. God, I had his name on the tip of my tongue. I just forgot it just now. But anyway, I remember him back in the day. Was a pretty good receiver from Florida A&M. Of course, they've had some great people over the years, some great coaches over the years at Florida A&M, starting with Jake Cather and then going all the way through to Billy Joe and, of course, Willie Simmons, who just left there. So, I know there's a lot to be said about coaches all over. I've had a chance to rub elbows with Willie Jeffries, the legendary coach who coached at South Carolina State. Of course, Buddy Pugh, who just retired. Marino Casem down at Alcorn State. You've got W.C. Gordon was at Jackson State. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on.
Eddie Robinson, maybe the greatest of all.
Eddie Robinson. I was fortunate enough to do the game in which he broke Bear Bryant's winning record down in Dallas, Texas. That was the State Fair Classic when they beat Fairview. So I've been in some great places. As I said, I've been in some tall cotton, as the saying goes. It's a tall cotton.
Les, I told you, Les, this guy has been places, seen things that people never would have under normal circumstances. And to have that gift to be a broadcaster and to travel like that, meet people, shake hands with some of the greatest of all time. Yeah. And he himself, one of the greatest of all time. Charlie, I tell you, that's awesome, man.
I just love the fact that, Charlie, you're so well-versed in so many sports, whether it's pro, college, track and field. There's so many broadcasters out there that are pretty much known for one thing and one thing only. You have done it all. But we do have some questions out there from some of our viewers. I think Tony was throwing me the 4 up. So let me get one of the questions out there from one of the viewers for Charlie Neal, tonight's special guest. Well, Tony's giving me the 1 up, so he's not really prepared yet. Here we go. Barry Smith says, welcome, Charlie, the voice of BET Athletics for 4 decades. How'd that work out for you? I'd say pretty good.
Yeah, not bad. When people say 40 plus years, it makes you feel old. And the fact that I'm still able to do it, I'm still excited about it, looking forward to the upcoming football season on HBCU Go. Where I'll have a 13-game schedule, which kicks off on Labor Day weekend down in Frankfort, Kentucky, with Virginia Union and Kentucky State. I'm looking forward to it. And, of course, basketball again. And, people always ask me how much longer I'm going to do it. And I'm like this, as long as I have my mental capacity to continue to remember things and remember players and numbers, and I feel good about myself, health-wise and all the other, I don't have a problem with it. They say, how about all the travel? Well, the travel is not that bad. I get on an airplane on Thursday night. I go to the city. I relax. I do the game on Saturday. I come home on Sunday. I mean, it's not that bad. It's not like I'm I'm on a 13-hour flight every week. So,
Charlie, you look great. You sound great, and you're experienced. You're not old. Come on.
Well, I don't feel it. Let me be honest with you. I don't feel it. I know I've been around this business a long time. And, people, like you said, people like Al and other, I see players all the time. What really gets you now is when you go to a game and you say, is so-and-so your dad? He said, yeah. I said, well, I did your dad's games. Now I'm doing the son's games. And I was kidding someone not long ago. I said, it won't be long before I'll be doing your grandson's games.
Well, you did one of Al's son's games, which I think was very special for you, Al.
Absolutely. Yes. And I tell you what, I had my grandsons with me, and I made sure they got an opportunity to meet Charlie Neal. So he's seen 3 generations of my family.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Well, we have some more. So we have a couple more questions. Barry, again, is you are known for your backstories. Who does the research for you?
I do my own. I actually do my own research. It's interesting because when we started at BET, unlike some of your major networks, now, of course, when I did the Goodwill games in Moscow, there were researchers. We had people that gathered a lot of information for you and things of this nature. And of course, we had all these different foreign nations. And one of the things, there was a guy named Tim Rockwood, who I worked with very closely over the years. And he was helping me with pronunciations of all these foreigners, because you had to understand which Soviet bloc or which part of the country it was, it Kostadinova or Kostadinova. It was spelled the same way. It was just making sure your pronunciations were great. But as far as what we did at BET, and unlike today, where you can get everything at your fingertips by just going on the internet, or Googling something, you can find out all the information. Back in 1980, there was no such thing as Googling things and internet. You had to go to the library. I remember the first time I was told, you're going to do gymnastics. And that's when I believe it was Turner told me, you're going to be doing gymnastics. I've watched gymnastics, but I didn't know anything about the balance beam and the uneven parallel bars and how high it was and how wide it was or anything of this nature. I had to go to the library and sit down with some books and do my homework and do my research. Now I could just Google it and I'd find out everything I wanted to know. But my research, and that I believe has helped me along the way, not depending on someone else to do my work for me, that I know I can go in and I do it myself. And that when I'm done, I feel better because of it. It's like somebody writing a script for you. Mm-hmm. That means you have to remember the script. If I write it myself, I know what I'm saying. So that's the way I've always approached it. And even to this day, I do my own research about players. I will call coaches. We have coaches calls. I will talk to sports information directors at schools and try to get some information. I will talk to beat writers at newspapers that cover particular schools to see if they have any inside stories on particular athletes or human interest stories on particular athletes, things and stories that I can tell other than it's 1st and 10 and it's, 3rd and long, or they just hit a field goal. Is there anything else about that kid that's playing on Saturday that will strike up an interest? What kind of human interest stories does that particular young man have? So, yes, I believe I still do my own research.
Well, here's a very interesting question from one of our loyal viewers, Rob Barry, another loyal viewer. We've got John, Stu, Howard, all out there. So here's the question. Mr. Neal, did you ever find yourself broadcasting a game when you were a fan of both the teams? And how did that affect your broadcast?
Well, we're human, so we do have a tendency to root for people, but I do not allow it to affect me. Now, let me say this about my partner, Lem Barney. I'm going to put him on the hot spot. Lem went to Jackson State. So anytime we did a Jackson State game, I was telling the story not long ago to someone, especially if we were at Jackson State. If you've ever been to that stadium, Memorial Stadium, the TV booth is at the very top of the stadium. It's very high. It's like the old sombrero down in Tampa, And anytime we did a game with Jackson State, I would always tell people I would always bring a parachute and put it on Lem, because if they scored, he was going to jump out the booth. So I wanted to make sure he didn't hurt himself. So we put a parachute on him. But Lem, now he did not hold back when it came to Jackson State. If they scored, he was going to let you know that he was all for them. But for the most part, we did a great job, I thought, of trying to not be biased and to be fair to both sides, and that's one of the things. Of course, you have coaches that you root for, you have players that you root for, things of this nature. For example, a perfect example, when Doug Williams won the Super Bowl with the Washington team, my cousin, Steve Wilson, was playing for the Denver Broncos. And Doug is a friend of mine. But I the first half of the game, I was wearing a Denver Broncos sweatshirt. Second half, I had to switch off. Doug Williams came back and did what he needed to do. It's one of those types of things. So you do have teams that you root for, teams that you feel good about, based on a number of different things, personal relationships with coaches and things of this nature. And you want to see, but I want to see everybody do well. I don't want to see anybody get hurt. You want to see everybody do well. I don't like blowouts. I don't want those 30-something to nothing games. I like those close games where it's a 2 or 3 point game and it comes right down to the wire. So, and again, personalities, it's like anything. We're human. There's some coaches that just, you root for because of their personalities and the way they are. But I don't root against anybody.
Charlie, did you develop your style of broadcasting over time? Is it something that you did that yourself, or did you really look up to when you were watching sports as a youngster? Emulated maybe somebody that you really liked the way their I don't know, whether it was their cadence or just the way they did their broadcasting, or is that something that you developed over time?
Over time, yes, but the one person who had, I think, the initial influence on me was when I was working at the TV station in Washington, D.C. There was a gentleman by the name of Jim Simpson, longtime broadcaster for NBC.
NBC, yes.
I remember him, yeah.
Jim Simpson was one of the anchors at the station that I worked for. And Jim worked all the major events for NBC Network. I mean, he was like Brent Musburger with CBS. Jim Simpson was the same way with NBC. And what really impressed me about Jim back in the days when I started, there was no such thing as teleprompters like you see today on television. And when I started, of course, I was new to television, so I didn't have anything to base my experience on. And I would watch Jim Simpson. I'd go there and I would watch him. I was doing the weekend sports, but I'd go there when I got off the air with the radio station and run across there, watch him do his newscast at night just to see how he did it. And he was very helpful and very influential in helping me develop myself. And he could go through a whole sportscast, without any teleprompter, giving scores and everything else. And so I learned that. So when the teleprompters came into effect, I didn't want it. I said, get the thing out of here. I can't read that. I know what I'm talking about, And I worked in Philadelphia with a young man named Larry Kane. Larry Kane would do a whole newscast without a teleprompter. Wow. I mean, this guy was that good. And so Jim Simpson probably had the most influence on me in terms of my initial broadcasting and in terms of my style on the air. One of the things I tried not to do was be someone else. I wanted to be me, but Jim Simpson did have a lot of influence on my career. Yes.
I do remember.
Charlie, let me ask.
Yeah, go ahead, Al.
Go ahead. No, I was going to ask Charlie, how has the industry changed when you first started to where it is now in terms of everything that's done, the preparation, the whole gamut of broadcasting an event? From your perspective, as a broadcaster, I mean.
Well, one of the things that everything's big now. It's a big deal. For example, just the number of cameras that they're using, the type of cameras, the size of the cameras, the technology has increased tremendously. To be able to get things in a perspective each and every week, and to do multiple events. Doing COVID, for example, there's a perfect example. During COVID, how many broadcasters were doing events sitting at their own house? They weren't even at the events. That is something that was brand spanking new, that people had no idea that type of thing could happen and what was happening. So the technology has evolved tremendously over the last 30, 40 years, even over the last 10 years. Like I said, the what we call the Remy effect, that's what they call it in the industry right now, where, you don't have to put a big truck at an event. There's a master studio, let's say in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that the director and producer are sitting at. The announcer might be at the game, or he may be sitting at his house in Bristol, Connecticut.
Yeah.
That's just the way the industry has changed. And again, like I said, during COVID, a lot of that came into existence, where announcers were not at the events, and the cameras were there. You had a couple cameras. You had a tiny little truck that was sitting outside, and you had a master control that was somewhere else in the country. So yes, that has changed tremendously. Plus, like I said, the advancement of the internet, that has helped tremendously in terms of a lot of the way things are dismantled. Sports information directors, you would totally depended on them before. And when they sent you stuff, they sent it over to, they'll call teletype. The paper would roll up, and you have to pull it down and it unfolded and things of this nature. And now you don't even have to do it. In fact, a lot of schools now, even today, are not even doing media guide. They have what they call a scan, a QR code you scan, and you can get their whole media guides. They don't put out a printed media guide anymore. The whole thing is done by way of computer. So so much has changed, but for the better. Let me say this, for the better. So much has changed, but it's for the better, believe it or not.
Well, we've got a few more questions for Charlie, so let's have Tony ring up another question here. From Stu Detlefson in California. Charlie, what sport do you enjoy calling the most? Great question.
Well, I get that question a lot, and I am glad that football season comes before basketball, as opposed to basketball before football. And the reason is football, how many players can you have on a team at one time, child? Especially in the college.
I think it's about 75. Yeah.
They may dress 75 players and you don't know which 75 is going to play, or who may start, but you never know when that 75th player may have to go in because of an injury. So you have to prepare for everybody. You have to prepare for everybody. You can't prepare for just the starting quarterback, running back. You got to know about that offensive lineman, that left guard, that right tackle, the center, the backup left guard, left tackle, the center. You got to know who's on defense. You've got to know who the special teams people are. You've got to know about everybody. So the preparation for football is so much more intense because of the numbers that are presented to you, as opposed to basketball. Of course, you may have 13 to 15 players on a basketball team, but there can't be any more than 10 on the floor at any given time. So, I like going from football to basketball because basketball kind of says, okay, I can breathe a little bit now. I've been panning, for 13, 14 weeks, but now I can breathe a little bit. So I like both. I actually enjoy doing both. But here's a sport that a lot of people don't believe I really, really enjoy. And it's probably the easiest sport that I ever have done. That's bowling.
Oh. Wow.
I've done the bowling championships for a couple of conferences for the last few years, and basically it's different. And I work with Randy Peterson, a Hall of Fame bowler. He's done a fantastic job. We've been partners for probably the last 10, 12 years doing NCAA bowling. And it's a different type of format. And it happens right after basketball season or right during the end of basketball season. And it's a team type sport. And it's unlike traditional bowling where you see a bowler go up there and he bowls 10 frames. It's a team type sport where it's almost like a relay in track and field where you have 5 bowlers bowl a particular game. And your anchor bowler is normally your number 5 bowler because they will bowl the 5th and the 10th frame. And if you know anything about bowling, how important the 10th frame is, because you may be able to get 3 strikes in that 10th frame. So I really enjoy bowling because it's really relaxing. It's easy. Track and field is a circus because there's a bunch of things going on at one time. You have field events, you have, track, you have sprints going on, you have pole vaults, you got triple jumps, you got hammer throws. All these things can be going on at one time. So it's like a free-range circus, but it keeps you on your toes. I really enjoy track and field because it's very challenging. And this is another one that I enjoy. I've done tennis. I've done a little golf, but not a lot of golf, but I've done some golf. But the tennis, the basketball, the bowling, the track and field, football, basketball, those are the ones that I've probably hung my hat on more than anything.
No, that was a great question.
Charlie, you gotta be comfortable with all of that. That's amazing, man. All the sports that you broadcast, to broadcast a sport like the multitude of sports that you broadcast, and to be comfortable enough to give it to the people the way you do is just amazing.
Well, it's about doing your homework. Again, it's about doing your homework. It's about understanding, because first of all, as a play-by-play announcer, the position I have, I just need to know the nuts and bolts, just the basics, because I have an analyst who can tell me all, like in gymnastics, I don't know that is a tenth of a point off on a landing, where the expert, that's what they are there for. But I'm going to tell you everything else about that particular gymnast, how they got there, what has made them successful in their particular sport, and things of this nature. So I'm going to give you the nuts and bolts of the individual, and you tell me about whether they stuck that landing or whether they made a misstep on a twist or something like that on a rhythmic gymnastics.
Well, Charlie, I mean, a broadcaster, really, play-by-play guy, you tell the story. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're telling the story, and the analyst is there to break it down.
Sure.
Certain plays. Al should know. Al's a number one. He's an A1 analyst, man, at Florida A&M. So he's doing it out there down in Jacksonville. I got a question for you. Well, we've got a couple more out there from viewers, but just from me. You did broadcast the Goodwill Games in Russia, and that was during the Cold War. That was during a really, well, I don't know, we're kind of re-entering that as we speak.
It was right after Chernobyl,
It was right after Chernobyl. So what was it like to broadcast, I want to say behind the Iron Curtain, but what was it like to broadcast, and how was it? How were the people? How were you treated there? Did you get to mingle with any other athletes besides Americans? Did you get to meet any of the Russian athletes, or I don't know, Yugoslavia was back there, Czechoslovakia? What was that like?
It was different. Again, like I said, it was right after Chernobyl. One of the things that it's funny talking about Bill Russell being there, back during that time, anytime you're in that type of environment, they give you all these credentials, that you wear that says you can go here, you can go there, you can go there, you can. And so Bill Russell was very funny because he said, we've got all these credentials around our neck, and they don't mean any, they're great until you get to a door. And it don't mean a thing. They would say "niet" in the NYET. That's the Russian for no. That means you don't come in here. But I enjoyed my time there. I tried to do as much on my off time sightseeing as I could. We were there doing summer nights where it didn't get dark till like 10 o'clock at night, and sun was coming up like at 4 o'clock in the morning. So it was your nights were very short. But I tried to do as much. And see as much of the city as I could. I enjoyed riding with, I guess, like we call it the subway. I think they call it the metro over there. But anyway, They have the longest escalators in the world. The escalator looks like it starts at the top of the Empire State Building. And you don't get down. You don't get to the subway till it gets down to the ground. But I was treated pretty good. Now, they had a village for us, a broadcast center that we were able to eat at. They brought in food from, the United States. We had our own, we didn't have to go out and find food. That was the great thing about it. They took care of us, and the athletes were fantastic. Those you got a chance to mingle with. Actually, the time you spent with them was kind of limited, except, when you were doing their particular sport, because the time difference. A lot of times we taped the event, and then we would go into the studio later on and broadcast it back to the United States because of the different time. So sometimes it would be 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd be sitting in the studio broadcasting an event that took place 3 or 4 hours earlier. So those are the types of things. It was different, but I was there. It was a month. It was great. It was, like I said, I took a whole again, I mentioned Chernobyl. I took a suitcase full of food.
Wow.
Over there, perishable food that I could,
Smart.
Not knowing what I was going to face.
Yeah.
And I wound up not bringing any of it back, not eating any of it, but giving it to the chambermaid at the hotel. And the lady, you'd have thought I gave her $1 million.
Wow.
Things like sneakers, jeans,
Wow.
It was like money to those people. It was just great. So I just gave her the whole suitcase of food, said, "This is yours. You can have it." I don't think I opened not one can the whole time I was there. So not knowing, like I said, what we were going to face. But they took pretty good care of us in terms of making sure we ate right. So.
All right. Well, we've got a couple more questions here from some of our viewers. So let's have Tony throw one up here from Barry in California. How did your first meeting go with Bob Johnson with BET back in the beginning?
Went well. That's how we started our relationship that lasted for so many years. And we still, to this day, communicate, not on a regular basis, but, I can talk to him and call him. In fact, when I was being inducted into Hall of Fame down in North Carolina, he was supposed to come and be my presenter, and had an issue with the airplane, and he was unable to make it. So, but the relationship started off fantastic, maintained it all the years that we were there. It was kind of funny because, like I said at the beginning, one of the things he said, he did not have a lot of money, couldn't pay me. And 5 years later, he brought me in and sat me down in his office. And he says, look, I know I told you I couldn't pay you back in the day. He says, how much do you think it will take for me to keep you on with BET? He gave me a blank piece of paper, told me to write it down. And I did. And he said, you got it.
Nice.
I was kind of shortchanged myself. I probably did. But
it was a sweet option, though.
Yes.
It'd be nice to work for a guy like that.
That's a true story. Yeah.
So another question here, why Lem Barney? What makes him unique for you? Now, to people out there who don't know Lem Barney, he was a great defensive back for the Detroit Lions, I believe number 20, also returned punts. He was a great punt returner.
Yes.
And I want to say, too, I think Barney Bussey played for the Lions as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember if he did or not, but he might have, yes.
I think he did. But what about Lem?
Lem Barney, how I met, well, I was working in Detroit when I met Lem, and I used to do the Lions preseason games when I worked at the station at CBS in Detroit. I was in Detroit for 7 years, from 77 until 1982. No, 75 to 1982, I should say. I was there for 7 years. And Lem and I became friends when he was playing. He retired. In fact, it was interesting because when Bob Johnson decided he was going to do football, one of the people he had suggested to be my analyst on football was Roy Jefferson, a wide receiver.
Sure.
Played with the Washington team. But he said, but I'll leave it up to you, decide who you want to work with. And Lem had retired from the pro football arena. And what made it a natural fit, I thought, was the fact that he went to Jackson State. So now you've got a HBCU alum doing HBCU games. So it only made sense that Lem Barney would be a part of it. And Lem came on board, and we just had 20-some years of great time traveling together and doing some great things together. And I mean, having a lot of fun together. Some great stories. Some I can tell, some I can't. But anyway, it was just a fantastic run of events and times with Lem Barney. I mean, I can't say enough about him and what he meant to my career also. A lot of people don't realize how you help each other. Not only was he good, I was good for his career, getting him into broadcasting, but he was just as good for mine because we worked well together. Mm-hmm. And that's the key. And if anybody's ever listened to our games, we had a lot of fun together. We had a lot of fun together up there in the booth.
Well, that's a
great chemistry. They complemented each other. And I tell you what, Lem Barney was one of those shutdown corners before they even talked about shutdown corners, man. And I tell you what, I'm sorry to hear that he's ill, and our prayers go out to him and his family, and hope he can recover, man. But I tell you what, a great guy.
Yes, indeed.
Well, here's a great question for you, Charlie. This is an interesting one. I'm getting a kick out of this one. This is from Rob. He said, do you have a favorite sports-related movie? And please don't say Kingpin, which is about bowling with Woody Harrelson. And just by looking at it, I don't think you've ever seen Kingpin. It's a pretty bizarre bowling comedy movie. But any of your favorite sports-related movies, what would it be?
I've got to think. Oof. I don't know. It's that's you've got me on that one because I don't spend a lot of time watching sports related movies, believe it or not. Give me some names of some that you can think of, and I'll see if I can remember.
Well, you know what's funny, Charlie? Last year we did a show and we did the best sports movies by genre, and we did like a final four. We did, and the people voted on it, and it came down to the final four. I think it was Brian's Song, believe it or not, was in there. Remember the Titans was in there. Rocky was in there. What won it, Tony? What was the one that Rocky ended up winning it? But I was a Brian Song guy.
I forgot about those movies, and you talk about remember the Titans. The gentleman who they portrayed in there, I've met.
Herman Boone.
Yes, Herman Boone. I've actually, before he passed away, had a chance to spend some time with him because he lived not too far from me, maybe about 20 minutes from where I live. So, yes, that was a great movie. Of course, Brian's Song was a tearjerker.
Yeah.
That was a great movie also with talking about the running back from
Gail Sayers and Brian Piccolo.
Gail Sayers from the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, that was
Brian Piccolo.
Yeah, that was
Brian
mine.
Piccolo,
That was mine. That was mine. I just thought Billy D. Williams nailed it. James Caan nailed it. I thought they were great in that movie. I mean, they were.
Yeah.
Listen, I cried, Al. How do you not cry at that movie? Come on. Yeah.
Right.
I tell you what, every time.
Tearjerker.
It is. We have
Every
one
time
more
you look
question.
at it.
Well, we have one more question. You're saying two. We're only going to go with one. Sorry, but because we're wrapping up here. We've got you were in the booth during numerous records being broken. Which one stands out the most?
Oof.
That's a toughie.
Well, the one that just really I always go back to because people always ask me about what game do I remember or do I treasure the most? And one of them was just watching Jerry Rice, what he did in college in his 3 years, catching over 100 passes each season that he was there with that Satellite Express and Archie Cooley, who passed away not long ago, the former coach at Mississippi Valley. And of course, Willie Totten, who was his quarterback, is now serving as the quarterback's coach at Southern University.
Okay.
But that was, I thought, the greatest show. When Jerry Rice got to the 49ers, Bill Walsh kind of adopted some of that wide open offense that Mississippi Valley was running back there in the 80s. The young man, I just thought about him, Alexander the Great. Remember him?
Oh, yeah, Ray Alexander.
Yes, Ray Alexander. It just came to me. I knew I would come up with his name from Tall Kid, right?
Yeah. He was right behind me.
Right.
He played for the Denver Broncos and I think the Cowboys too.
Yeah, I just thought about it when I was talking about it. Ray Alexander. I call him Alexander the Great.
Okay.
But anyway, the Jerry Rice era, I thought was just, and he broke all kinds of, and plus, Willie Totten, I thought, got a raw deal because he broke all of Neil Lomax's records. And Neil Lomax held all those records at that particular time for passing in the division. And Willie never really got a good shot at playing at the next level. But I thought some of that show was just great. I remember doing a game down in Baton Rouge, and Southern University was ahead at halftime over Mississippi Valley. And I think they were like it was like 32-16 or something like that. And the final score was like 63-45, Mississippi Valley. They came out in the second half, and every time they got the ball, they scored, and none of their scoring drives took over a minute. It was like 1, 2, 3, we're in the end zone. 1, 2. And what was more ironic about that team, they had a running back by the name of Carl Byram, who rushed for over 1,000 yards. And you say, well, how could they rush over when so many people were dropping back trying to cover Jerry Rice and the rest of those receivers that Mississippi Valley had? When they did give the ball off to Carl Byram, he would run 20, 30 yards before anybody could tackle it. So it was a great show. It was the greatest show on earth. I mean, that game, I remember that game, the Eddie Robinson game. And then I did the first 6 overtime game. That was in the Circle City Classic in Indianapolis. And that was Hampton and Florida A&M played in that game. I don't know if you remember that, Al, Justin.
I do. I do.
That was Joe Taylor against Billy Joe.
Billy Joe, right.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. That was a 6 overtime game in the Circle City Classic. I did that game. So, I mean, and it was a 1-point final, I believe it was. 59-58, I think, was the final score.
It was a shootout. Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, you know,
Sure
Charlie,
was.
before we let you get away, man, tell me your thoughts on the NIL and the transfer portal and what kind of effect you believe it's going to have long term on college football, college athletics as a whole.
In HBCU schools, particularly, Charlie, because
well,
they're
first
not
of all,
getting
the NIL I applaud it, and I applaud it not only because, but because for years, young athletes, whether you're at an HBCU or you're at the Power Five, you were not allowed to have any kind of compensation from the school in terms of being able to live like the rest of the student body as an athlete. You had to be, if a coach gave you $5 to get a bag of chips, they were on probation. So, I mean, the NIL, I believe, with the kids bringing recognition to their schools, just like professional athletes bring recognition to their teams, why shouldn't these kids receive some type of compensation as long as it's done legitimately? Mm-hmm. Now, the transfer portal, I think, has gotten a little bit out of hand. I think to the point where, I believe that's the reason we just saw Saban decide to step down. I mean, he said, I've had enough of this. You used to recruit kids and you knew you were going to have them for a couple of years. You recruit a kid now, if he's not happy with something, he's gone. And look how much you spend trying to recruit that particular individual, how much time you spend, not necessarily so much in dollars and cents, but just in terms of effort. And you bring a kid in there thinking he's going to be the person who helps you turn your program around, and it just doesn't work for him, for the student. Now a lot of people say, well, coaches can move on. Why can't students move on? Well, they do move on, but there's got to be some kind of regulation. They've got to put some kind of limit on it. Plus this eligibility that came about during the COVID. I've seen players that's played for 5 different schools. How can you play for 5 different schools? I mean, there's got to be some kind of moratorium or some kind of limit on how much, how many times you can transfer. There was one time you couldn't even transfer within your own conference. Right. Some conferences wouldn't allow you to transfer in your own conferences. You're seeing kids, I'll tell you, Marcus Riley was a kid who transferred from Bethune-Cookman right over to Florida A&M last year, had a good year. But I'm just saying, we didn't see that for years and years and years. And so I think something needs to be done about the transfer portal. I think coaches welcomed it at a time when it was important, but I think something needs to be done. I don't know how you feel about it, Al. You see it on a regular basis.
Hey, I'm right there with you. Les and I talk about this all the time, and when we have guests on the show, we always bring that up. But I'm with you. I think the players should be compensated. It's been a long time coming. Somehow, some way, I think they were being at the bigger schools. They were being compensated, but like you said, if you got caught, you're gonna get your hand slapped. Yeah. And obviously, the transfer rule. You got guys playing till they're 25 and 26 years old in college. You had the first 3 quarterbacks, I think, drafted this year. Well, on the plus 24 years old side,
Yes.
And so, I mean, at some point, it had the COVID, you throw in that COVID year, any red shirt year, and before you know it, you had a school for 5 or 6 years. That's a long time, but yes. I agree. Sometimes you got to put a handle on it some kind of way. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Speaking about that.
It will be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, again, and coaches have to be, going crazy. Some coaches now at the HBCU level, it helps in certain situations. I've known, and I've talked to a bunch of coaches just recently with all these college media days, and some of them have kind of put their toe in the water when it came to the transfer portal in terms of bringing in players, but they try to limit the number that they bring in to what they specifically are looking for at that particular time. And most of them at HBCUs are bringing in transfer students who are grad students who are in there. Right. They only have that 1 year of eligibility left. They've completed their undergraduate studies. They have a year of eligibility left. They come in there with that 1 year of eligibility as a grad student. And I think that's where the HBCUs really, really are making out when it comes to the transfer portal.
Well, that's
a good call, Charlie.
Speaking of your point, guys, there was a football player who just finally graduated by the name of Frank Harris, who quarterbacked at University of Texas San Antonio. He played 7 years. He had a red shirt, a medical red shirt, a COVID year, and 4 more years. He graduated at 25 years old. He was a man. I mean, like to your point, it's crazy, and you really can't play 4 years at 4 different schools, and it's happened. I know it's happened.
Yes, it is.
There's a kid, James Akinjo, who started at Georgetown and went to Oregon. Then he went to Baylor. I'm like, are you really getting an education, or are you just going to play sport? I mean, come on, enough's enough, But I think they let the top off, the genie's out of the bottle, and it's going to be very difficult to put that genie back in.
That's true.
But before we let you go, Charlie, you got a tremendous award, a very prestigious award. Back in December 2023. I want you to maybe talk a little bit about this. This is another gentleman who is a pioneer in broadcasting, and maybe talk about the award that you got.
It was the Chris Schenkel Award.
Yes.
Chris Schenkel was a longtime broadcaster with ABC, did all the different sports, Olympics, everything, you name it. And I believe since they started doing the award, it's probably been somewhere between, I want to say 18 to 21 recipients of the Chris Schenkel Award that's presented by the College Football Foundation. And it's held in Vegas in December, along with the College Football Hall of Fame award ceremony. And it was just a fantastic time. Peyton Manning was there, Tim Tebow. I mean, you name who's who in college football. A lot of them went on to play pro football. But it's basically a college football event, and it's very prestigious. It's a great event, and I'm just honored to have received the award, being, first of all the recipients, the first African American to receive the award, the Chris Schenkel Award, a longtime, like I said, broadcaster who they named that award after. He was the first recipient of the award, and after every year they give an award in his name. So I'm very fortunate to receive that award.
Well, Charlie, it's well deserved, and it's very few times that we get to rub elbows with a true icon in his or her profession, and you are that, sir. You are tremendous. You've been tremendous for many years, and I see nothing but great things moving forward. Like you said, I don't know how long you're going to do it, but just keep doing what you're doing because it's fantastic.
Well, I start out Labor Day weekend. I'll be in Frankfort, Kentucky. So tune in. HBCU go.
We will be there. We will be tuning in, and we want again. Thank you so much for making time to come on Swartz Talkin Sports and talking about your legendary career tonight.
Thanks,
Charlie.
Les.
I'll see you around this. I see you around this season.
Hey, no question, Al. You guys be good, be safe, and thank you for having me.
All right, Charlie.
All right.
Have a
Take
great
care,
rest of the week, and I'll be back with Al Chester and more Swartz Talkin Sports after this.
Forever 24 Fit, Leland's only gym with 24-hour access. Get fit when it's convenient, utilizing Life Fitness, cardio, and weight machines. And for those of you who prefer free weights, there is a free weight area as well. Start your membership today and get on your way to a better you. Six Happiness. Enjoy fresh Asian cuisine in a relaxed and friendly atmosphere where we believe good times deserve great food, featuring the best sushi chefs in the Leland area. So come on in, and we guarantee you will be delighted.
Welcome back to Swartz Talkin Sports. I am your host, Les Swartz, joined, the man to my right, Al the Rattler Chester, voice of the Florida A&M Rattlers, basketball and football broadcast, and former national championship quarterback. Great interview with Charlie Neal, a true legend in the field of sports broadcasting.
No question. I tell you what, Charlie's a class guy, man, and got some stories, man. I had no idea he had done the plethora of sporting events that he had done, and for the duration. I mean, you talk about his ability to continue to do it at a high level, and articulate himself, and just like he says, I mean, he puts you where you need to be, and he let his analysts, his
analyst guys do his thing.
Do their job. Yeah. I mean, he just let them work. So, I mean, what a great guy, great interview, man. And I tell you what, we're going to see him around this fall for sure.
Yeah.
At some ball games. We actually do ball games at the same time. Obviously, I'm doing radio and internet. He's doing the television piece, but we get a chance to hang out a little bit.
Yeah, I'll definitely be tuning into that opening broadcast, no doubt about it, and really the reason to listen to Charlie. Before we move forward real quick, I know we're going to do a 10-minute wrap. We're going to talk a few things. The NFL training camps have opened up this week. One of our sponsors, who you just saw in a commercial, Forever 24 Fit, was voted best gym in the Cape Fear region. So I work out there. Joni works out there. That's how I look. That's how I get to this look, man. We're working out at the gym, right? So I want to thank. And we got a little. So congratulations to Sandra Wall, owner and proprietor of an amazing gym there. And then also we've got on the screen, that was Joni and I, our chat girl, my fiance Joni, at the NASDAQ, our company that I work for, rang the closing bell the day after 4th of July, and we actually look at that. Al, wouldn't it
That's
be great?
That's a boss look there, Chief. That's a boss look.
Let me just tell you, wouldn't it be great if we could actually have our show and we could actually have the production done on that screen in Times Square? That would be something.
Oh, man. That would be huge. That would be big time.
That would be huge. So, and again, and I have to throw in Benny the Book. Everyone's asking, where's the book? What's going on with the book? The book is fine. He will be back football season. He's prepping. We've got college football, pro football. Benny's picks will be there. We can't wait to get Benny back in the studio. Also, Benny with a chip and birdie today, Al. He hits the flag post, drops it for a birdie, and I think he finished 1 over on the front 9. So the man's playing some golf, Al. The man's playing some golf.
He's fine-tuning that game. I tell you, Benny the Book.
He's beating my butt, that's for sure. So listen, we've started out. We've got the pro camps opening up all over the place. Next, in a couple weeks, we start a couple exhibitions. We're just in. The NFL is definitely gearing to an 18 game schedule, Al. It's going to happen. There's no doubt about it. The money's there. I don't know if the players want it, but there's going to have to be 2 buys. What's your take on moving this thing to 18 games now?
Well, I tell you what, the NFL is big business, and they've got the biggest game in town. They know it. They got the product, and they're making a boatload of money. Regardless of how I feel about it, Les, I mean, I think that the preseason is watered down to the point that, and people, the way they're selling the tickets, you have to buy season tickets to even get the preseason tickets. So, I mean, that's part of the game. The television revenue was off the chart. It's all about money. And they're going to make that money. The players take a beating physically, I think. But, hey, it's always next man up. So we'll see how that plays out.
Now, I have to ask you a question, Al. It used to be, at least when I was growing up, and I know when you were playing, that they'd have 4 preseason games. They would put in draft picks, lower draft picks and free agents, and give them a chance to show on the field in true competition, were they good enough to make a team? Now there's only 2. Games, preseason games. That's it. For the most part, they look at these 7-on-7s and they really evaluate the talent that way. Do you think that free agents or lower draft picks, maybe someone drafted 6th or 7th round, get a true chance to really show their stuff? I mean, do they get as good as an opportunity as they had in the past to make a squad?
Well, it's all about opportunity. So sometimes it can be challenging depending on where you go. Teams draft based on what they need, not necessarily by the position. Kids need to know when they get an opportunity to sign a contract that they got to come in some kind of way and figure out a way to make the ball club. Special teams, for example, they're watering down the kickoff and kickoff returns where you don't have to do that. So why invest a lot of money in a guy who's a specialist in a kickoff return now? The wide receivers, they need guys who can run and who can catch. The quarterback obviously is the key factor of it all. The running back position, watered down. So it just depends on the needs of the team. You still got some old school coaches believe that you got to be able to run that football to be successful. I believe you got to do it all to have a balanced attack. But it's a crapshoot, man, when you get drafted. It's a tremendous opportunity, and you just hope that you're in the right situation at the right time.
Now, our viewers and subscribers out there, and by the way, we've hit over 880, so thank you so much for subscribing to the show. If this is your first time checking out Swartz Talkin Sports and you like what myself and Al and what the book have to say, please hit us up. Let us know how we're doing. Subscribe to the show. Comment. Let us know how you're liking the show. How do you like the guests? I know we've seen a couple things out there, so we love that. We got to get our subscribers up to 1,000. That's our goal this year. We want to get it up to 1,000, and with your help, we'll get there. The big thing everyone's talking about, Al, is this. They're opening up training camps, okay, which is great. But you've got so many people talking about holding out. I'm holding out here. I'm not reporting. It drives when we all talk, my friends amongst ourselves, it drives us crazy about these guys are getting paid. They sign a contract. Now, I understand you had a good season and you did well, and maybe you exceeded expectations. But the bottom line is, what is the word contract? You signed a contract. No one else signed it. You did. Live up to it. You get a signing bonus, or most players do. If you get that signing bonus at 25 and 30 million and you do not live up to your part of the bargain, you do not play well, which happens a lot, Al. Guys underperform.
Absolutely.
Right? They're not paying back that signing bonus. They get to keep that signing bonus. Now, the team can cut them, and I understand that. They don't get paid that salary, but they get to keep that signing bonus. What is the deal with all these players holding out, wanting more money? And if they get it, what if they don't play to that capabilities? Do they have to pay back some of this salary? What's your take on this whole thing?
Well, I tell you what, it's a crapshoot for real. Players get in position where they feel like they can strong arm an organization to get a new contract. Usually your marquee players, your quarterback, some receivers, maybe a running back back in the day could do that and get away with it. D-line player, linebacker. But, that loyalty piece, living up to your contract, they see other players. They think they're one of the top 5 or 10 players at their position. They want to be paid accordingly. I don't have any beef with guys making as much money as they can make. The thing about it is what's important, and then how do you negotiate a contract? Do you not show up at camp, or do you wait, get to camp, continue to do what you're doing, build the camaraderie that you need to be successful, and then let things kind of play out? Some players wonder, I'm not going to camp until I get more money, a new contract. And sometimes I think that's not a good move to make. Why they do that, I don't know. They try to mirror probably what they've seen other players do, maybe who've had success doing that. But they ain't but too many, Aaron Rodgers and those type players out there who can do that. So the kid in Green Bay now, I heard he initially talked about not going to camp, but I heard today that he was going to be in camp. And if you can't negotiate if you're not in camp, so I think he'll be there and things will work out. He finished strong, so he felt like he should be paid. He finished strong last year. Felt like he should be paid accordingly. So if he can get that money, great for him. But what you don't want to do is disrupt things at camp, be a disruption as you're trying to, move forward into the season.
I don't deny anybody making money. Listen, if the owners are willing to pay you the money, you'd be crazy not to take it. I'm fine with that. But it's not just the contracts and the pros. You've got the commitments in college. We talk about this all the time. We touched on it a little bit with Charlie. We talked a lot about it with Coach Darryl Walker. A guy commits, right? A commitment is a commitment. It's really not, they shouldn't even call it that, Al, because it's not a commitment. I just look where LSU's got 3 of the top 5 players committed, not this year, but next year. I guarantee you by the time the season starts in 2025, 2 of those kids won't be playing at LSU. You know why? Someone's going to offer them a better NIL deal. Someone's going to offer more money, or LSU's going to recruit a player that plays the same position and they don't want to compete. But, you commit to a program. I understand the coach leaves. And here's the way I think it should be. If a coach, recruits you, Al Chester, he's in your living room. You go there. You like the school, but you really like the coach's offense. You really like that coach. He leaves. You should have the opportunity to leave and transfer to another program. That's fine. But to transfer to 4 programs in 4 years is absolutely, as Charlie said, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's gotten to a point where it's really not what the transfer portal was supposed to be, right? But people are scared of lawsuits. I think the NCAA is petrified of being sued right now. And we're in a sue-happy society. We just are. People sue everybody. So I just think that they're so scared right now that they have not put together some kind of a good program for transfer portals. And I'd love to get people's take out, our viewers out there listening, or if you've seen this show in a tape delay, I'd love you to comment. And what do you think about how it should be done? Are they doing it right? Should players be allowed to renegotiate at will? Is it a good thing? Does it disrupt players or teams and things like that in the ability to start the season off on the right foot? So I've just always, that's just been that sticks in my craw a little bit, just a little bit. So, but listen, we've gone 70 minutes. Tony threw me up the board. Again, a tremendous show today. Great get with, and before we go, we wanted to give props to a U.S. Olympic athlete. We've got the Olympics coming up, opening Friday in Paris. But this is the guy, Al, that you're very familiar with. He's an alum. He's the first guy really to take it from track to the NFL and become a stud football player from track, and that's Bullet Bob Hayes. Maybe you can talk a little bit about Bob Hayes.
Yeah, he's my homeboy, man. He's from Jacksonville, Florida. Yep. The only guy who has a Super Bowl ring and a gold medal. And I tell you what, he set the bar so high. As a youngster growing up, I remember everybody in the neighborhood wanted to be Bob Hayes when we were out playing sandlot football. And I tell you what, he's an icon from Florida A&M. And I tell you what, Bullet Bob Hayes set the standard for all of us. And I tell you what, they're doing a tribute to him here in Jacksonville tomorrow evening in honor of his Olympic paralysis and everything that he's done in terms of the Olympics. And then, again, I like to salute the three guests we've had the last few weeks: Garrett Scanlon, Chandra Cheeseborough, obviously, and Ray Robinson. I mean, we had a great Olympic view, a good shot from those folks who all participated in the Olympics, been there, done that, bought the T-shirt. And I think they provided some great information. And hopefully we can get them back sometime during the Olympics, so they can kind of give us some commentary on some of the things that's going on.
Well, just to let people know, we are not going to be doing a show next week. We're going to take a break next Wednesday, but we're hoping to do out there through Al's help is maybe get Chandra Cheeseborough and Ray Robinson back in 2 weeks. That would be the first Wednesday in August, right before they start running the track and field competition at the Olympics, and really handicap the Olympics, in the track and field. I think that would be outstanding to maybe do a 30-minute show and really talk Olympics at that time. That would be the first Wednesday in August. But we'll see what we can do, Al. We'll try to put that show together maybe in next week and see if we can get our guests back on again. I know they're pretty busy. They got busy schedules, but let's see if we can squeeze them in for 30 minutes. But again, with the Olympics starting on Friday, just like to wish all Olympic athletes safe. There's so much stuff going on around the world, man. I just hope things go smooth and we don't have any issues. But wish all of our athletes and all athletes who participate in the Olympics all the very best. Well said, my man Al. Well, Olympics start Olympics start Friday in Paris. Let's root on Team USA in all of their competitions. We'll hopefully be back Wednesday in August, our first Wednesday in August, with an Olympic show. But until then, Al, listen, you take care of yourself. You have a fantastic week. My man, you too. Take care. Be safe. Have some fun, buddy. And look and work on that golf game. I'm going to need to catch up with Benny. So, listen, for Al Chester, Joni, the chat girl, who's unfortunately not with us tonight, but will be back, Tony the Tiger Smaraldi, my amazing producer, this is Les Swartz Talkin Sports. We'll see you, hopefully, in 2 weeks. Good night, everyone. Good night.